to another episode. So today's guest is Miss Tammy Fashion, which is the coolest last name ever. And we've actually been working together for a few months now. She's been a part of the program, and her story is it's been very awesome to work with Tammy over the past few months because I've really seen her become a different person through just learning about herself and not quitting on herself and nutrition and all the things. But today I really want her to just share kind of part of that story, her health and wellness journey, and even some other parts of the story, like some of the dark things that have happened in life and just carry with us forever. We're gonna dive into all that as much as we can. But before I talk too much, Tammy, why don't you start with just giving us as much or as little of your story as you'd like? Tell the people about yourself, and we'll dive into it.
All right. Well, hi, everyone. So happy to be here. And thank you, Kyle, for, allowing me to come onto your platform. I love what you're doing. Um, so my name's Tammy Jo Fashion. I actually am a designer. I don't want to say was because I don't feel like it's over, but I was a fashion designer for 12 years.
Nice.
And I was a sustainable fashion designer. So I took use basically discarded materials and turned them into beautiful dresses. And
That's really
um,
cool.
yeah, it was a wonderful experience. There's a story there. It was all about healing. I came to find out, like
Yeah.
using the discarded pieces of myself and like putting them back together into something beautiful was
Hmm.
really what I was like trying to manifest through all of that. So, which I didn't even realize until like way later.
Yeah.
But it was wonderful. I had a store in Orlando, Florida. It was just it was great, and it's a huge part of me. But I also had a child about 3 years ago, and that was around the time of the pandemic as well. And I
Hmm.
had moved, and everything was shut down, and so I shut down my business as well,
Yeah. Yeah.
which was honestly like it was a calling. God, talked to me about it. Um, he was like my business partner at the time. I know that might sound funny to some people, but I it was a very gentle like you have to let this go for
Yeah.
now,
No, that's awesome.
and it was hard to hear, but I'm very much love to be in obedience because if you're out of that, there's trouble.
Yeah. It doesn't usually go well.
No, it doesn't go well. But so what I'm doing now is I am a single mother of my 3-year-old son, and now instead of doing fashion design, I'm doing home design and renovation. So I kind of moved into the home space, which really lights me up. Like my favorite thing is to just redo a bedroom or redo a space in someone's house,
That's so
especially
cool.
spaces where they just are they don't know what it is. It's usually their junk room, and they're like, that's kind of my favorite thing. It's like, oh, that's a junk room. No, no, that's a bedroom for a guest, or that's an Airbnb, or it's like a studio. and
Wow.
and they're like, yeah, that's exactly what I wanted to do with it. And I'm like, let's get it done.
Let's do
So
it. Let's go. Let's roll.
let's do it. I can flip over a room in a day or in 4 hours even. So it's
Wow.
just something that, it's been a passion of mine. And now I'm like trying to again start another business with that being the core. So yeah, that's what I am and what I do.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's a we don't have to harp on this, but that's a real skill. So I was in the construction space for a while,
Hmm.
and that's a real skill to be able to look at a room or a place or a building and see what it could be. Like
Hmm.
it's incredible. So we worked with some designers as well, and they would come up with these elaborate ideas, and my brain couldn't even like I couldn't do it. I'd be like, wow, okay, this is what it's gonna look like. So it's a real skill. I mean, that's awesome.
Thank you. Thanks for
Yeah.
saying that. I appreciate that because I sometimes think it's not, and I'm like, where am I? But that's like, Satan getting into your head and like doubting the
Yeah.
way God made you.
Planting lies. That's usually
Hmm.
how it rolls.
Hmm.
So tell us about your health and wellness journey. So it's since you've been working with me, I'll give the audience a little teaser. One of the biggest things is you've learned that you need to eat more, and that is something that is relatively common amongst females. most prevalently, I would say. But this has been something that's like it seems as though, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it seems as though it's been a pretty radical change for you where like you just feel overall better and healthier so far. I mean, this has been a new change over the past like month or so,
Yeah.
but I'd love for you to kind of walk people through that, like your past with health and wellness and what that's been like, and then leading up to now.
Well, ooh, that's okay. I'm going to try to simplify it. So yeah, lately, let's maybe go work backwards. So I I just started eating what I'm supposed to be eating. We're gonna start there. I just started actually getting in, I never really knew what macros were. I mean, I knew what they were, but I didn't know how to like do that. And I wasn't really committed to like, oh, macros. But
Mm,
now I'm like understanding the how it works and how important it is, and also just calories. And I grew up in like 80s, 90s, where it's like, oh, you need to have less calories and you need to have less carbs and all these things. So like going back into that and like reopening MyFitnessPal after like maybe 10 years of not using it, it was just a little like daunting to me because there's just so much noise. There's so much noise, especially for women, of like what you should eat and how you should eat and when you should eat and how little you should eat.
mm-hmm.
And I just kind of grew up, not necessarily grew up like as a child in that way, but like later on in life. And I was married to someone who wasn't very kind about those things.
Yeah.
Um, he always would just like make these little like comments about my plate. Like if I had a lot of food on it, he'd be like, "Oh, well, you're eating with your eyes," and I'm like, "What? What does it even
Mm,
mean? I'm just hungry." like,
yeah.
like I wasn't allowed to like eat much, um, which was weird. So there was always like that. Like there's tons of little jabs in there that like really got under my skin throughout the years, which I didn't think would really manifest, but they certainly did now that like I'm here in this part of my journey. And I think for that's just like how I learned how to like eat less.
Mm,
And then actually I did divorce that guy. Actually, he divorced me, but that's a different, you know, segue. But we I that was really tumultuous in my life. Like that was a real rock bottom for me.
yeah.
We were married for 14 years and I just divorce wasn't part of my vocabulary, and it was it was devastating. Like I've never felt that depressed and completely just rock bottomed in my entire life. Like there was one point where I literally just thought of like driving off the road just to make the pain go away.
Yeah.
Um, and with that came no appetite. So I had no appetite during that time. I couldn't eat a thing. I was literally just like eating apples and string cheese to like get through the day. There was a day where I just ate like turkey slices. Like it was just, and I was
Yeah.
working out. I was working out like 7 days a week. I was doing like HIIT classes, and I was waking up early in the morning, going for like long runs. Like it was ridiculous.
Yeah.
And
You were in overdrive.
I was in overdrive. Like adrenaline has been something that, has been this like sneaky thing for me. Like
Mm,
I've had to have it to survive a lot of really scary situations. And then with adrenaline, you just go, 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 go,
yep.
but you don't eat. And there was another time in my life that happened to me too. Like after I had my son, I met someone who I thought was gonna, be my husband after I got divorced, and it was wonderful for a minute, and then it was all lies. And I had to leave that relationship like
Yeah.
a week after I had my son. So again, it was, yeah,
Jeez. Oh my gosh.
like I
Oh my
was
gosh.
still bleeding. like, and I was like, please tell me that this is like, he basically just said, I didn't want to be married and I don't want to be a father, like 5 days after he was born. And I was like,
And just left.
I left
Yo. And okay. Okay.
after that news.
Yeah.
So
Oh my gosh.
yeah, I was just like, I was living in Savannah at the time. I had moved there with him. And we were there for about a year and a half. And that's where when I got pregnant and everything I thought was going to fall into place. We were going to get married, all the things. And then he just started talking to somebody else, like while I was 8, 9 months pregnant. And I knew it, you know,
Oh
they
my
knew. I
gosh.
was like, dang it. I was like, no, please don't do this. Don't do this.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was tough. Like a lot of the dreams that I had were just, starting to just shatter. And
Hmm.
but again, back to like adrenaline, it was very much like, okay, I'm not safe here. I know I'm not safe here. I'm not gonna, the first lesson I teach my son isn't gonna be that we stay where people are mistreating us. So, by the grace of God, a friend had randomly called me from Orlando, which is where I was from. And she was like, are you okay? And I'm like, no, I don't think so. Like, this is what's happening. Like, I was in almost like a euphoric state too, because I just had my son. I'd been waiting my whole life to be a mom. So I was like,
Hmm.
nothing's going to steal this joy from me. Nothing. Like, and I knew it was an attack of the enemy. I was like, he's trying to kill, steal, and destroy. Like,
Yeah.
and no, no. And a good friend called and she's like, well, I have a room. And she's like, I don't like what I'm hearing. And if you need to leave, like, I have room for you back in Orlando where all my friends were. And so I was like, okay. And sure enough, I confronted him about him talking to somebody else and he got angry and flipped out. And I was like, oh, okay, so I'm right. All right,
Yeah.
I'm gonna go. I
Yeah.
was like, I'm gonna go. And literally I packed everything that was near and dear to me, and that turns out to be my plants, my dog, and my son, and I left.
Hmm.
And I was like, if you're if you're wise, you'll follow us. You'll come after. You'll change your ways or whatever. And he never did.
Never.
So mm-mm.
Now, does he see your son now at all? Hmm. That's
Yeah,
heartbreaking. That's really heartbreaking.
it's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
It
That's
is.
that is a sad reality of this world is that sometimes people just cannot get out of their own way and just do the right thing. Like it's unbelievable. Dang.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, it's like I I've practiced forgiveness so much in my life just because it does not serve me in any way to be angry about those things. And I feel like it's a spiritual gift where I can see why people make certain decisions
Mm.
and like forgive them for that. Like granted there's consequences and it is a very sad, like my child's fatherless and that's not fair for him. But at the end of the day it's like there was so many other things that happened in that guy's life to have him bail from that situation, from the most amazing gift
Yeah.
that God can give. And so, that's sad in of itself. And like I can have compassion for that part of the story. And also still have good boundaries for me and my son. But yeah, like,
Yeah. Yeah, it's balancing understanding that but also still being like really hurt and upset. Like and figuring out how to toe that line cuz yeah, you're right. You want to be forgiving and it's good to be forgiving, but it also still really hurts and it
mhm.
sucks. And you think about that and that's a process.
It was a
Um
process. But yeah, I mean, it was like I gave myself a whole year to grieve it. And I went to therapy like once a week. And, because it was almost like, okay, this happened again. Like I was betrayed again because I was
yeah.
this like, similar situation with my ex-husband. And I was like, so the common denominator here is actually me. And was like, what did I do? Like, how did I mess this up somehow?
Mm.
And, it definitely for me came down to, um, it basically came down to me betraying myself and me betraying my beliefs.
Mm.
And it just those relationships weren't going to fit there if I was the one that was like settling.
Yeah. When you say betray yourself, you mean by choosing that person to begin with or what? What do you mean?
I think the biggest thing was, so, I am a Christian woman. I always have been. I love God. I've always been, I was brought up in the church. And I think along a lot of the times, like I was just always so desperate for love. I love love, right? I just love it. And I want to be in partnership. But I sacrificed some of my beliefs a lot of
Mm,
the time to be in these certain relationships, and specifically the my son's father. He wasn't a believer, but I also thought, God can change people's hearts, and like, I don't want to, I want to be able to support his spiritual journey, not just like write him off for it. But like that was, again, like there's just those little deceiving characteristics that
yeah.
can happen. And I obviously was like having sex out of marriage, which was a big no-no for me anyway. So, but
Yeah.
at the time I was just like, well, I did everything right the first time I got married. Everything. Like I waited until I was married. You know everything right. Right. And it really failed me. I felt like doing things right didn't necessarily equal a great life. And the second time around, I kind of took matters into my own hands, and I was like, well, what does it matter?
Yeah.
And that was, I think, it was just one of my greatest like sins, I think, that I did,
Yeah.
against God, was completely just go behind what I knew to be true and
Mm,
take the steering wheel. And then, but how amazing God is, and I'm gonna cry because it's so beautiful, is that I did something wrong, in accordance to like me and my relationship with God. But he gave me the greatest gift in return.
yeah.
Like,
Isn't it funny that that's how God is? When we are complete, we're a complete mess, and we make mistakes and we do whatever, and God literally rewards us. Like he gives us something awesome. I mean,
doesn't
it's
make
not,
any sense.
it doesn't make any sense. And it's not to
Yeah.
say that there's not still consequences for things. Like, yeah, there's consequences, but even in that, like God still gives us good things, and you're like, this is insane. I don't understand this.
Yeah.
And it's I believe, and I believe it's because he wants to have just a better relationship with us, and he's trying to woo us. He's like, look, I'm not going anywhere. Like I'm here and I love you. And I just think that's so cool. And you got to experience that firsthand, you
Yeah,
know.
it's amazing. I look at it that way every time,
Yeah.
because and that's also what allowed me to extend such forgiveness. It's like, well, if God could forgive me for walking away from him and making my own choices that weren't great, um and he forgave me for that. Not only forgave me, but like gave me something that I always wanted.
Mm,
Um who am I to not forgive anyone
yeah.
for walking away from me? Like, I'm just a human. Walk away from me all you want, but like, don't walk away from God.
Yeah. 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 I mean, that's the story of the prodigal son. I mean, not to say you were the prodigal son, but that is the story where he goes and he just completely goes against God and lives a crazy life, but then he comes back and God just literally runs to him. It's just yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, you've been through a lot and you've experienced a lot, and it's pretty easy to understand why it would be so hard to like be in a place where you can like really take care of yourself. Like when your brain's in that survival mode and you're thinking about this and your adrenaline's coursing and you're trying to figure out where to live and go here and go there, and then you're like, well, I gotta count my macros too. It's like that just doesn't really like that
Yeah,
just
I
doesn't
was
really
like,
seem
no.
to fit into the puzzle there.
Right. Well, then I have to feed my son, and I'm just like, okay, well, he's first. But I'm tired. Like at this point, so again, like back to the adrenaline. Like the adrenaline got me through all of that. Like finding the safe place to be. Like how, okay, I'm doing this on my own. That's been confirmed. All right, how do I get help? Where is safe? Because it's like when you get betrayed deeply by people, you start to just question your safety,
Hmm.
and and like who you can trust. And again, like having to make those decisions in the heat of the moment. Again, it was like you're running from a lion. Like I was just trying to survive. I was trying to take care of myself and now my son, and eating is the last thing
Yeah.
that I was thinking about. So, and like long story short, it just caught up with me.
Yeah.
It caught up with me. So like after running on that and like it being such a high cortisol situation in my body, I think once I did start to like settle down, then it became like a low cortisol situation, which is almost like, you're in the red
Yeah.
at
Y-
that point.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I was listening to a podcast recently with Chris Williamson, and he was talking to some expert in the field of psychology, but they were saying that when you go through something, they're referring to like kids when you go through a traumatizing situation and you do what you have to survive. It's very similar to you. Like you're in a situation where it's like you're doing what you have to do to survive. What happens is it's necessary during that time to be like that. Like for you to be in fight or flight mode, figuring out where to live, like not worrying about you eating, but getting sure you're like that was necessary, right? But what happens is when we get out of that situation and we're in a new situation, we can't switch off. So then we stay in that mode. And so it's he said you almost have to have the ability to look back in the past and thank yourself for it. Like, okay, I'm thankful for that time. I'm thankful that I was able to do that because I survived and I made it here. Thank you. Like really accept that and give yourself grace, but then move into the next phase where it's like, okay, now I have to do something else because I'm in a different season of life. And so I'm on my next phase of survival. And so for you, it was learning how to bring yourself down and actually like, okay, how do I do this thing? How do I take care of myself? How do I
yeah.
process it? Like what is and so you went through that and that's hard. And so I guess just like that evolution, maybe talk a little bit about that because you're into that next phase now. Uh,
Hmm. Yeah. Praise the Lord. I'm in the next phase. Yeah. So I was still doing workouts, like hit workouts, boot camps, like right after, right when I was like cleared to be able to do that. Cause I was just, yeah, I was concerned about my body. I was like, well, I don't want to like let myself go. And, I'm still single. So I want to be like, attractive.
yeah,
But
yeah,
I also just wanted to be healthy and strong enough to carry everything because I'm carrying everything. Um, so I was still continuing to do those classes like after I had Castor and then for like the last 2 years. And nothing was changing in my body. And I
yeah,
actually just kept on getting injured. Like my back would just keep hurting, or like then my knees would like hurt. And like it was just, I was like, nothing's happening, nothing's working. Um, and then of course I did talk to a good friend of mine who's a nutritionist, and she's a gut health specialist. And she was the one that first pointed out, like, she's like, well, okay. She's like, you don't look good. And then she was like, but what are you doing? Like, what are you eating? Because I started to just lose my sense of self. I was like, I have to look in the mirror to just even know that I'm alive. Because I'm like, I can't even feel
yeah.
myself. Um, and she was like, well, what are you eating? And I was like, what?
What do you mean eating?
I was like, what? And yeah. And I was like, well, if I'm being honest, I was like, I had some of the hot dog that I made for Castor and the macaroni and cheese, and then maybe I had some ice cream. And she was like, okay.
Yeah.
She's like, that's not enough. And also, that's not good food either. And she's like, you need to be having, like, all the things, like, whatever.
Right. Healthy food. Yeah.
And yeah. And she's like, you also like, are you taking vitamins? And I was like, oh no, I'm taking a probiotic, but like, I can't. I was like, I don't even want to drink water. I don't want to do anything. I was like, I want to take care of my son and like go lie in bed and put the covers over my head. Like it was, it's a little depressive state.
Yeah.
And um she was like, okay. So she got me like lined up with all of these like supplements to take, but she was very adamant. She's like, the supplements aren't going to do anything unless you like, you know, are still eating food. And that was really like the first time I heard it, where she was like, I think you're under eating. And I was like, well, that's just new to me. I don't really know what under eating. I don't like
Yeah.
I've looked my best and I've like survived a lot by not eating anything. So like I was like,
Yeah.
I think I'm just one of those people that only needs 600 calories a day.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just like, in a time warp in myself. Like I'm some type of like unicorn. It turns out I'm not.
That's like when people say, "I think I'm one of those people that only needs 4 hours of sleep." And you're like,
No,
"No. You're just
no.
surviving on adrenaline. You need more
Mm,
sleep."
yeah. So anyway, it still took me some time. Like it almost took me a whole year to even really let that sink in.
Mm,
And then it wasn't until like I started working with you and we were doing the work and I was just like, nothing's happening.
yeah.
I'm like, nothing's happening. And then I got sick, which turned out to be like also a result of burnout. And I was like, "Ugh, it's just bad, man. I'm like, it's just bad. I just want to work out and like gain the muscle and lose the fat. Like, can we just like get this on the road?" And you were like, I think you need to calm down. Like,
Yeah.
take a break, go for some walks, and just eat. And I was like, I don't want to. I'm like, I don't want to.
L
And then you linked me up with your nutritionist, and we had a heart to heart, and um, she was just very serious. She's like, you're not going to see that scale move. You're
Mm,
not going to lose any weight until you start like telling your body and showing your body that you are feeding it.
yeah.
And so I was able to explain to her, a little bit about like my past experiences and, just being in fight or flight and like running off adrenaline. And like, that's always worked for me. And
Mm.
she's like,
Here we go, hold on one second. It says it says you're not recording right now, and I can't hear you. Okay, hold on. Here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna leave the studio, and we're gonna come back in. Okay? Can you hear me?